I am delighted to introduce Zia Haider Rahman, who is going to read from his first novel, In the Light of What We Know, which is just out from FSG.
Thank you, Brigid. I'm only going to read a little. I'm not even going to read. Can you hear me?
Yes.
You work out how close I have to have this microphone to my mouth. I'm going to read one page. And I don't need to do any work to set the scene because it's the opening. Actually, there are 3 epigraphs, but I'll spare you those. Maybe I'll include the last epigraph, very short one. It is not down in any map, true places never are. By Herman Melville, who wrote Moby Dick. In the early hours of one September morning in 2008, there appeared on the doorstep of our home in South Kensington a brown-skinned man, haggard and gaunt, the ridges of his cheekbones set above an unkempt beard. He was in his late 40s or early 50s, I thought, and stood at 6 foot or so, about an inch shorter than me. He wore a Berghaus jacket whose Velcro straps hung about unclasped, and whose sleeves stopped short of his wrists, revealing a strip of paler skin above his right hand where he might once have worn a watch. His weathered hiking boots were fastened with unmatching laces, and from the bulging pockets of his cargo pants, the edges of unidentifiable objects peeked out. He wore a small backpack, and a canvas duffel bag rested on one end against the doorway. The man appeared to be in a state of some agitation, speaking, as he was, not incoherently, but with a strident earnestness, and evidently without regard for introductions, as if he were resuming a broken conversation. Moments passed without my interruption as I struggled to place something in his aspect that seemed familiar. But what seized me suddenly was a German name I had not heard in nearly 2 decades. At the time, the details of those moments did not impress themselves individually upon my consciousness. Only later, when I started to put things down on paper, did they give themselves up to the effort of recollection. My professional life has been spent in finance, a business concerned with fine points, such as the small movement in exchange rates on which the fate of millions of dollars or pounds or yen could hang. But I think it is fair to say that whatever professional success I have had, owes less to an eye for detail, which is common enough in the financial sector, than it does to a grasp of the broad picture in which wide patterns emerge and altogether new business opportunities become visible. Yet in taking on the task of reporting my conversations with Zafar, of collating and presenting all the material he provided, including volumes of rich and extensive notebooks, and of following up with my own research where necessary, it is the matter of representing details that has most occupied me. The details, to be precise, of his story, which is, to risk putting it in such dramatic terms as Zafar would deprecate, the story of the breaking of nations, war in the 21st century, marriage into the English aristocracy, and the mathematics of love.
Oh.
So I was thinking about your novel in connection with sort of the theme of this event. When we received sort of guidelines for tonight's event, we were told that the interviews would be limited to 10 minutes, and we were to skip about the small talk and to ask precise, direct questions that would lead to in-depth, thoughtful answers. It's a lot of pressure. So I wanted to ask you about brevity in connection with this 600-page novel.
Okay.
What about the story needed that space?
I was trying to make a joke there by just saying okay. So what about the novel needed 600 pages?
The story of these, maybe we should sort of give a quick sort of plot summary of the novel.
Yeah.
Sort of, the opening, a long lost friend, sort of, they come back into touch after 20.
Shall I just read this? Shall I do that? Just because I want to make sure that we get all the themes. Shall I do that? Okay, one September morning in 2008, an investment banker approaching 40, his career in collapse and his marriage unraveling, receives a surprise visitor at his West London townhouse. In the disheveled figure of a South Asian male carrying a backpack, the banker recognizes a long-lost friend, a mathematics prodigy who disappeared years earlier under mysterious circumstances. The friend has resurfaced to make a confession of unsettling power. In the light of what we know, takes us on a journey of great scope from Kabul to London, New York, Islamabad, Oxford and Princeton, and explores the great questions of love, belonging, science and more. It is an age-old story, the friendship of two men and the betrayal of one by the other. The visitor, a man desperate to climb clear of his wrong beginnings, seeks atonement. The narrator sets out to tell his friend's story, but finds himself at the limits of what he can know about the world, and ultimately about himself. Set against the breaking of nations and beneath the clouds of economic crisis, this novel chronicles life's big love. All right.
Tell me what the novel does not include. Did it start out that big? Was that when you first had the idea for the novel?
Sorry, I was being a bit mischievous there. I thought that might answer why it took 600 pages. It started out as an idea, but an idea doesn't really have size. It's in your head, so it doesn't have dimensions. It's just a dematerialized thing. Yes, I had the whole of the novel in a sense, as an idea in my head. The words for every part of it hadn't arrived. But after about 6 months of writing, I realized this was going to be a very big novel. I hadn't thought about the size of the novel, had a sense of the size of the idea. In fact, I realized that it was going to take me time to write this novel. I'm going to try to make the answer brief. I realized that it was going to take me such time that I must consider how I'm going to change as a human being in the course of writing it. So I went straight ahead, I did this about 3 or 4 months in, and I wrote the last chapter, and then I went and tried to find a few places in the middle of the novel or elsewhere, because I wanted to make sure that I had the tone consistent through the course of this long novel. And I knew that I was going to change. It took me in the end, 4.5, 5 years, some say, 40 years to write this novel. But I didn't want something that was jarring as you went through the novel, because I was changing as I was writing it. Sorry.
So you started with the ending.
I started with the first chapter, the end. I started with the whole idea for purely practical reasons, because I knew that I would change as a human being, as a writing human being. I wanted to make sure that the tone is very important to me, that the tone was going to be stable. Because the tone is the sort of the entry point for lots of other things. Once you, for me, every writer is different. Once you have a sense of your tone, it creates the parameters for all sorts of other things.
So I thought maybe what I would do is pull a quote out that sort of seemed to connect to many themes of the novel, and see if we could maybe talk quickly about at least a couple of them before our time runs out. Race never undermined me from within. It was rather the invisible things coalescing that brought down a private humiliation. The invisible possessed my heart with shame.
Oh yeah. Gosh. I don't. I can't. I think I know. It's probably in a scene to do with a party. Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I think what he's driving at there is that, in fact, what he's driving at there is that the experience of racial difference becomes, it can be, race is just sometimes a really boring topic. There's a camera, I just realized, be careful. Race, sometimes it is a boring topic, but and it doesn't. And the discussion about race doesn't go very far. For a lot of people, the experience of racial difference, or what is discussed, what is talked about as racial difference, is actually an experience of something else, perhaps caste difference, and it's refracted through the prism of race, so that really what is felt are the anxieties of dispossession, of inferiority, of alienation, of lacking power, all those sorts of things. So, and those sorts of things can undermine you from within. They're the things that disable you as you go out into the world and try to do business. And so that's what he's getting at there, that he's in a party and he may be the only black person at this party, but he has a certain degree of self-awareness. He knows that is actually irrelevant. What's really eating him up is this, is his own sense of inferiority. And that comes from many other things, other than race.
And is he aware of this?
Yeah, he is. I mean, he is. Yeah, he's aware of it, but the question, one of the questions that we return to is to what extent can you escape from that? And at the heart of this novel sorry, I want to get back to your questions. There isn't a epistemological inquiry. What is it that we can rely on? What do we, this recurring question? What do we know? What do we think we know? How can we rely on what we think we know? And how far does knowledge actually get you? There's a limit. You can know. Linn Ullmann made a very interesting point. It was a very interesting discussion about communication, and I had the thought that one of the reasons why we fail to communicate, you and I, Brigid, one of the reasons we fail to communicate is that there's something going on in me that is not the same as what's going on in Brigid. Here it is. I have a stimulus that causes an emotion, and now I want to convey that to Brigid. What do I mean by convey? I actually want her. If I'm seeking empathy, I want her. I don't just want to know that she knows what I'm saying. I want to know that she feels what I'm feeling. And yet, what's happening? The stimulus has caused my emotion. Am I expecting my words to cause that emotion in her? And that's where the failure is. It can't happen. I mean, that's one. So there are all sorts of other problems here. But that's seems to me an insurmountable problem, right? But I can't remember why I said that.
I was thinking about your novel in connection with Linn. Sort of the characters in Linn's novel seem to me to sort of accept the failure of words to communicate those things.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if there was something about sort of the expanse of this novel, and that there's sort of an optimism in the characters that they can communicate it because they simply do not quit.
Yeah, they do not.
And the novel doesn't. I mean,
And
it
even
also,
the closing, I don't want to give it away, but there is a closing image,
right.
and a closing statement that reinforces. God, I really don't want to give this away. There's a lot I don't want to give away. That's why I started reading from the beginning. But that's right. I think it is. There is an optimism at the heart of this novel, and it's an optimism about. It moves the focus away from the goal of communicating to the act of communicating. That actually, that's all we have, but we have to do that. Does that make sense? Maybe it doesn't.
Yes.
Sorry.
Maybe so as not to put you in a position to feel like a white person novel.
Yeah.
I'll ask you sort of more generalist questions just about writing a novel.
Okay.
There's a line in there that says, one writer can change another writer's writing self. And I wonder maybe if you could just talk quickly about writers who have changed your writing self. What's important to you?
Yeah. No, well, Philip Roth can make it easy for you to write about lust and power and the ways that we deceive ourselves into thinking. Actually, no, that's not Philip Roth. But that's an example. Austerlitz had a profound, impact on me in this novel for showing me that fiction, fiction can have certain cognitive effects that, well, it just showed me that there are cognitive effects that fiction can have that you don't see often. And Austerlitz was mesmerizing. It put me in a state of, it caused a trance-like state in me, and that was hugely influential. So I explored how that might have been done in Austerlitz, but also how various exercises to see how you can get people, if you want to introduce an idea. There are various techniques I try to use to try to get an idea through, but you have to approach people you have to sneak up on people. I'm mindful of that.